Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Monday, now September 19th, 2016. Let's take a look at what's happening out in the tropics. We have Tropical Storm Karl, still kind of struggling here. We do have another system, and this one could develop eventually into a tropical depression, probably later today. Maybe go on to become Tropical Storm Lisa, but you can see it's being sheared, and Karl has been struggling. We have the remnants of Julia still sitting in here. Been an interesting year in the Atlantic. We've certainly had a lot of systems overall, and there really hasn't been a lull since the end of August where we've had nothing to talk about. It's just that we haven't had a singular huge impact storm. Certainly Hermine had its impacts here in the Big Bend area up towards Tallahassee, and then in the southeast, and then the economic impact of the false alarm that this could become somewhat of a problem for New Jersey, and the impact that that had on the Labor Day weekend. All of that, I don't want to understate how much those things hurt, but we haven't seen one massive hurricane hit somewhere, and that's good, obviously, but we're starting to wonder what's going on. It's been almost 11 years, and I don't think Karl is going to be the one. I said it in my blog today. It won't be Karl. Karl's probably going to come in and then turn very sharp, maybe near Bermuda, which is right there. We'll see. Interesting times in the tropics. Even if there are not significant events out there, there's still enough to talk about. And things are very active. It's just that they're battling hostile conditions. And I guess it's a good thing in the end. We marvel at what we see out here, the beauty of these massive events, these hurricanes when they form. But when they hit land, they're not so beautiful anymore. And anybody that's been through them, they know that. The lasting impacts, not very pleasant. So let's take a look at what we've got. Remnants of Julia in here. I'll take a closer look at this in a moment. Here's Karl. It's interesting that some of the energy kind of leaning out in front of it. And there's the center of circulation, and they're still battling dry air, strong upper-level winds. And you can even see those upper-level winds right there, pushing those thunderstorms out and away like this, instead of the air fanning out in a clockwise fashion. I've talked about that so many times, and there it is again. Now this next system looks a lot more healthy than does Karl, and this will be another large tropical cyclone that develops, probably move on out into the open Atlantic with due time there. Now here's another perspective of the East Coast. We do have this front coming through, weak cold front, another stronger system. As we get closer and closer to fall and into October, these fronts will become stronger and stronger. And eventually, things will change, and we'll shift the focus of attention towards the western Atlantic basin and not so much on the tropical waves. But for now, there's the leftovers of Julia, which was once a tropical wave, came all the way across, meandered around, finally got organized enough, danced around out here for a while, and now it's sitting up here off of Wilmington. And the only concern I have for this is you got a lot of tropical moisture here. It's very muggy. High dew points out here. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina myself, and this could come up along the coast and kind of get squeezed out from this front, bringing quite a bit of heavy rain and some gusty winds, but that's about it. Nothing really significant, and it certainly won't redevelop. Quickly, in the eastern Pacific, I wanted to show you this hurricane, Hurricane Pain. Nice rhyme there. Good alliteration, or not alliteration, but you get the idea. I'm just going to give up on that. Hurricane Pain. Moving up to the north and then eventually the northeast, possibly bringing some heavy rain into this region and maybe even into the southwest, Las Vegas, maybe Phoenix, Southern California, San Diego, LA. You might get some moisture from this, which is desperately needed. So as long as it's not too much at one time, it'll be a good thing, but really not much of an impact up here from wind or surge along the Baja, so no need to worry about that. But that rainfall could be heavy in this area, lighter amounts up to the north and east, but enough that it warrants paying attention to, and again, hopefully it's more beneficial than negative impactful. That's the way to put it. Looking at the 850 millibar vorticity signatures for our systems, very odd looking. Here's the oval shape to what was left over of Julia. I don't even know what you call this shape. It looks like a kite. There's a kite string. I don't know. These systems, they don't look the way they normally should, except in the Pacific. There's a nice round vorticity signature of Hurricane Pain in the Pacific, and then we have our weird amorphic shapes to the systems in the Atlantic. It just goes to show you it's been a weird year. And you know what? It's interesting because, the distance between Payne here and, even in the Gulf of Mexico over here, it's not 3,000 miles. We're not talking about the difference between the Atlantic Basin and the Western Pacific, for example, where it's vastly different geographic area. It's just so strange that you've got all this activity out here in the Pacific this year, almost record levels again, but then just a few hundred to a couple of thousand miles away, everything out here has struggled. And it's only separated by a landmass. It's just weird. And I can't figure it out. I've looked into it, asked a few people. We know what it is. There are upper level lows, there's dry air, and there's shear. But why? Why is that ever present in the Atlantic and not happening very much in the Pacific? I mean, my goodness, that Typhoon Meranti out there, 180-something mile per hour. I mean, that's just crazy. And that seems to be the norm out there, whereas in the Atlantic, everything seems to be anemic. Just kind of weird, right? So looking at the upper level winds, here's, case in point, upper level low here to the west of Karl, upper level low sitting here. You can find another upper level low sitting there. Not very much in the favorable wind category. These are coming out of the northwest. Lighter winds out here where the next system, I forget it, maybe it's 95 or 96L. Lost track. Hey, we're getting ready to come up on 99L again later on, and there will be more systems. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the upper level winds coming out of the southwest over here as this front comes through. Julia really won't have a chance to regenerate. So things are still kind of messed up in the Atlantic. Karl is going to have its challenges. One of those that won't be a challenge will be the sea surface temperatures, the upper ocean heat content out ahead of Karl in this region, very high. So that's not going to be too much in the way for it to strengthen. In fact, some of the models really picking up on that. We'll talk about that in a moment. The rest of the basin here is still very warm. And as we get into October, people are starting to say, well, that's it. Probably not going to see much more this season. And while I don't know anything for sure, I don't have a crystal ball, it seems to me that with all this activity that's been coming, it'll continue to come. These tropical waves will come off Africa at lower and lower latitudes, and they won't come off up here and be yanked out to sea. They'll come across, and they may develop farther to the west, as we've seen, but then they're already at a low latitude here, and they're still moving west. So as we get towards the end of the month and into October, we really start to have to watch this area right through here. And that's just climatologically what we would do anyway. It's not like I figured this out on my own. It's what typically happens. The emphasis of development shifts to this area from this area. And that doesn't mean we won't have anything out in the open Atlantic, but keep an eye on that. A month from now, things could be very different. And I just, I think that it's coming. All this activity, all that warm water, if we get a favorable MJO pattern even for a week or two, it could be a very different outcome for the Western Basin. It's not over yet. So we'll see. Maybe it is. Again, I don't know everything, but I just sense that something's going to happen. So we'll see, right? Anyway, what's happening now in the track department here for Karl, again, Bermuda, small geographic area for a hurricane to run over. They've done it. I was there for one of them 2 years ago for Gonzalo. The eye went right over the top of Bermuda, and so it does happen. This is the different models from earlier today. This will get refined over time. There's still the remotest of chances that this comes across and kind of gets left behind here, but you never say never, I know, but this is pretty, unanimous almost that the models are going to show this pretty quick curve. In fact, I think it's going to come up and do a hard right, and whether or not it's over Bermuda, near Bermuda, we'll just have to wait and see. But I do believe that this will turn out to sea. I'm 95% confident of it. So that other 5% means we'll keep an eye out just in case. One thing that's really interesting, check this out. This is the intensity plot, and all of the different regional hurricane models and the statistical models and some of the dynamic models, basically your non-global models, indicate that this becomes a pretty healthy hurricane. But then look at the GFS here, the AVNI. It's just nothing. In fact, it shows it weakening with time. That is really interesting. I mean, it is. It's like, why this incredible difference here between these models, which are tightly clustered. You can see that very plainly. And then all by itself, the AVN, which is the GFS, flat to slightly weakening over time. Very strange. I just don't understand. This is a very odd season, hard to figure out. So this is what I worry about for Bermuda in particular. If Karl passes close enough to Bermuda to get the core of the supposed hurricane, and that's what the forecast is, for this to become a hurricane, it would be intensifying as it went by. You see all that right here? Presuming these are correct. So we need to watch this closely, and I've got some friends in Bermuda that I have met strictly through the fact that I study hurricanes, and I'll certainly keep them up to date. And they got a great Bermuda weather service out there too, so we'll be watching this very closely. All right, so looking ahead real quick here, again, I mentioned sort of this feeling that, it's not over till it's over. And it's not just, people are going to go, well, that's just wishful thinking because you like being in hurricanes and you have a passion for them. Make it very clear, I don't like what they do to people. And that's a very sad thing. And there's nothing I can do about that. I try to certainly prepare people and keep them informed. But my desire to study hurricanes at landfall should not be mistaken for wanting people to be run over by hurricanes. That's just horrible. So that being said, I look at this and all this warm water that's available still in the northwest Atlantic, and these are today's anomalies, by the way. The warm main development region, the cooling subtropical Atlantic here, which means that this should be the focusing area, and the very warm Caribbean and Gulf. Add to that, this has gotten as large as it's been the entire season, this cold anomaly area. That we head into October, these tropical waves continue to come off. They'll be lower and lower in latitude. That energy will end up over here somewhere. You got these fronts that'll come down. That'll add potential focusing points. It just seems to me that we're not going to get out of this. And it's not just the United States that I'm talking about. The Caribbean islands, Mexico, Central America. Somebody probably will be hit by a major hurricane. I'd say there's a 60% shot. Not just the U.S., but anywhere west of 60 degrees longitude, which is right here, in this region through here. Somebody's going to get one. It's just there's too much energy available, and all you need is a week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks of favorable upper level conditions, and it could be a big problem. So just stay alert. That's all, and if it doesn't happen and I'm dead wrong, congratulations. That's wonderful for everybody that lives along the coast. Absolutely. And, it's not 2005, but as I look back in history, part of my This Week in Hurricane History, this week, 11 years ago, an absolutely remarkable event that really doesn't get as much attention as it should, kind of like Ike in '08. This is Rita, and this was a late September system in a very busy year. This is not 2005 for sure. But, again, it bloomed late over here north of Hispaniola, came through the Bahamas, strengthened incredibly fast over the loop current, became the most intense hurricane ever observed in the Gulf of Mexico, scared the daylights out of everybody in this area. 113 people in Texas died as a result of Rita. How many of those people were killed by the hurricane itself? 6. The other 107 died because of the evacuation. One of the worst examples of how to do things in human history, and certainly for the United States. I mean, as advanced as we're supposed to be, that was horrifying. The heat, the people panicking, not understanding the risk, and everybody leaving at the same time, ill-prepared for it. I was there, and you should watch the Rita chapter on YouTube. It's posted on there from the '05 season. It was unbelievable. It was like driving through a Steven Spielberg disaster movie, like The War of the Worlds or something, where it's just mayhem. There was all these cars, or modern times now, The Walking Dead, and I don't make light of it. It was horrifying. All these cars that were abandoned, the burnt bus, all of that. You remember the fires on Galveston? It was just crazy. And had Rita been the only event that year, it would have had remarkable coverage. but because Katrina was still an ongoing disaster, the aftermath, Rita, as big a story as it was still sort of in the shadow of Katrina. And that's understandable, but it was unbelievable. And it just goes to show you, if Rita had been the only one that year, as I just said, it would have been the story, and it would have been the poster child of It Only Takes One. Now, fortunately, it came into a fairly low-populated area compared to where it could have been in the Houston, the Golden Triangle region, as they call it. It didn't. It came into near Sabine Pass. I was in the eye of Hurricane Rita, and again, you can see that on the YouTube video there from our Tracking the Hurricanes series. And it was remarkable. I'll never forget it. It's one of the most unbelievable events that I have ever witnessed. Satellite picture of it, Category 5, perfectly developed eye over the loop current of the Gulf of Mexico, central dense overcast in there. Everything about it was phenomenal. Luckily, it did weaken on its way west, and it only came in at about 120 miles per hour, but the damage had already been done. Those lives had already been lost well before the arrival of hurricane force winds. And we have to learn from things like that. And that's why I say, people that want to just dismiss the season as being broken and it never will change, it may never change. That's true. But if it does, and you get something like Rita coming your way, you darn well better be ready for it. And I speak from personal experience. I've seen it, and I know. So I want you to use that, all right? It's important. All right, let's try to end on a positive note. Nothing threatening the United States as of now, so that's great news. We'll certainly keep an eye on what's happening with Karl and our friends in Bermuda. Keep an eye out for it. And surfers rejoice. This may be a good event for you if Karl will ever develop into a hurricane. And if it misses Bermuda, that'll be even better, because there's a lot of people that like to surf, and this could be good for them. And that could be good for the economy, because people come down to the beach. They spend money on gas and snacks and food and maybe hotels if it's a long enough event. Try to make something positive out of it. If it just will avoid land altogether, it's a win-win situation. Have a great rest of your Monday afternoon. As always, thanks for tuning in and listening to me. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.